Do you actually know what you're feeding your family when you pop a frozen pizza in the oven? I'm talking about that feeling when you're knackered, it's Friday night, and you just want something quick and easy. You grab a well-known brand from the Tesco freezer, think nothing of it, and feel good about giving the kids a treat. But what if I told you that cheese melting enticingly on top might legally not even be cheese? What if that pepperoni was actually a reconstituted paste of chicken carcass and industrial preservatives, some of which are banned in other countries? If you're nodding along thinking, yeah, that's just modern food, mate, then you need to stop right now. Because you're not just buying dinner, you're subscribing to a massive corporate deception that trades your health for their profit margins. By the time we're done here, your entire perspective on the frozen food aisle is going to shift. You'll find out exactly which big British brands are absolute rubbish, using ingredients that belong in a chemistry lab, not a kitchen. We'll break down the specific industrial shortcuts they use. We're talking things like dough softeners, sourced from duck feathers and cheese, made of vegetable oil and wallpaper paste. I'll show you how to spot these chemical imposters in seconds, simply by flipping the box. And most importantly, we're not just going to leave you shocked. We're going to give you concrete solutions. Near the end, I'll reveal the select few brands sitting right there in British supermarkets that use genuine clean ingredients, real cheese, real dough, no nonsense. It's the difference between eating a chemistry experiment and actual food, and after this, you'll be in the 10% of shoppers who know how to tell them apart. But before we start naming and shaming, we need a quick lesson in how real pizza is made, and where the industry's sneaky bastards have replaced it with tech. Real pizza, at its heart, is simple. You need 4 ingredients for the dough: flour, water, yeast, and salt. Time and fermentation do the rest, creating that perfect texture. Good cheese is just milk, cultures, salt, and enzymes. Simple, right? But time is money for these corporations. They want pizza that's perfectly uniform, sits in a freezer for months, and costs pennies to produce. So, instead of giving dough time to proof naturally, they inject it with accelerators like ammonium sulfate, a chemical also used in agricultural fertilizer to make yeast work faster. They use industrial dough conditioners to mimic the softness that fermentation achieves, shortcuts that turn baking into an industrial process. They strip the natural goodness from flour and add synthetic nutrients back in, because enriched sounds better than processed to death. It's like taking a classic car, replacing the engine with a lawnmower motor, and then painting it to look like a Ferrari. You might still call it a car, but it sure as hell won't drive like one. And don't get me started on the meat. Real pepperoni or sausage is a quality product. The stuff on cheap frozen pizzas? That's often made using mechanically separated meat. Picture this: chicken carcasses forced through a massive sieve at incredibly high pressure to wring out every last scrap of tissue. The resulting paste is then reformed, colored, and preserved with synthetic antioxidants like BHA and BHT, which international health agencies have flagged as potential carcinogens. They use modified food starch as a filler and textured vegetable protein to bulk it out, meaning you're eating chemicals and soy instead of actual meat. Every step is a calculated decision to slash costs, and every chemical is a marker of how far the food has strayed from its natural state. The core deception, though, is the cheese. Real mozzarella is an artisan product. The pizza toppings you find on budget frozen pizzas are often a concoction of water, palm oil, potato starch, isolated milk protein, emulsifiers, and stabilizers. They use additives like titanium dioxide, the same whitening agent found in paint and sunscreen, to make this grayish, oily slurry look white enough to pass as mozzarella. In some countries, including the entire EU, titanium dioxide is banned from food due to concerns about genotoxicity, potential DNA damage. But on British supermarket shelves, it's still legally hiding in your dinner. They can get away with this by calling it imitation mozzarella or analog cheese. Legal definitions that mean they don't have to follow any standards for real dairy. The industry is gambling that you'll trust the picture of melted cheese on the front of the box, and that you'll never, ever flip it over to read the truth. After this video, they're going to lose that gamble. Let's dive straight into the frozen wasteland of the British High Street and unmask the specific chemical culprits sitting in your local supermarket right now. We start at number 10 with the absolute rock bottom of budget engineering: supermarket own brand snack pizzas, specifically targeting the price-sensitive shelves of Asda Just Essentials and Morrison Savers. These brands market themselves as the ultimate weekly budget savers, costing less than a quid. But more pizza is not a bargain when you look at the industrial construction under the hood. To survive months of freezing and subpar home ovens while maintaining a dirt cheap price, Their dough relies on massive quantities of processed wheat gluten and corn flour thickeners rather than real proofing time. The pepperoni on these value pies is heavily processed, packed with dextrose and sodium nitrite. Nitrites are preservatives that, when heated in the presence of meat proteins, can form nitrosamines, which the World Health Organization flags as highly problematic for long-term gut health. The salt content in a tiny Asda Just Essentials pizza runs outrageously high for its size, delivering a punch to your blood pressure before you've even finished a casual lunchtime snack. It is volume and cost-cutting prioritized entirely over baseline nutrition, banking on the fact that you won't care what's in it as long as it feeds the kids cheaply. Halal scanner moving along to number 9, we hit a household giant, Goodfellas. Positioned as the friendly stone-baked Irish staple for busy families, it's a freezer regular across Tesco and Sainsbury's. But a familiar name doesn't mean clean ingredients. While their basic margarita uses standard mozzarella, the moment you move into their loaded meat and stuffed crust options, things get industrial. The meat toppings are stuffed with synthetic antioxidants and preservatives designed to artificially extend shelf life. Goodfellas' classic crusts utilize highly processed, finely milled flour that strips away natural grain fiber, which is then synthetically stabilized. The real issue is the structural fillers, the consumer group which has repeatedly highlighted the sky-high sodium levels hidden within mainstream frozen pizzas, and Goodfellas' meat ranges frequently hover around half your daily recommended sodium limit in just a few slices. It's a classic case of corporate consolidations, squeezing the quality out of a legacy brand to maximize factory output. Eden Farm next up at number 8. We look at the deep discount supermarket specials from Aldi's Carlos range and Lidl's Chef Select. These house brands copy the big players perfectly, offering takeaway-style stuffed crusts at a fraction of the cost. But to make that price point work, the ingredient deck reads like a manufacturing warehouse inventory. They rely heavily on rapeseed oil blends and modified starches to bulk out the sauce and give the dough an artificial pliability. More critically, these budget supply chains are incredibly consolidated. If a major supply chain hiccup or contamination occurs at a centralized dairy processor providing non-fat milk powders or cheese analogues, it cascades instantly across multiple discount retailers. Beyond supply vulnerabilities, the sensory reality is a doughy, gummy crust that relies entirely on sugar and salt to mimic flavor. You're saving a couple of quid at the till, but you're gambling with a laundry list of processing agents and a complete lack of transparency regarding where these ingredients are actually sourced. Uber Eats at number 7, we confront the reigning king of the British takeaway illusion, Chicago Town. This brand is famous for its iconic deep dish mini pizzas and its takeaway stuffed crust, range sold in every major supermarket from Iceland to Waitrose. Their entire identity is built on the promise of restaurant quality, gooey indulgence at home. But flip over a Chicago Town pepperoni stuffed crust, and the illusion shatters. The stuffed crust doesn't just contain real cheese. It features a processed cheese blend engineered with modified potato starch, palm oil, and stabilizers to give it that eternal stretch that real mozzarella loses the second it cools down. Palm oil is over 50% saturated fat, and excessive consumption is consistently tied by health organizations to cardiovascular risks. Consumer data highlights that Chicago Town's loaded varieties are absolute sodium bombs. A single takeaway pepperoni pizza can pack over 1,500 milligrams of sodium, a staggering amount for a casual weekend treat. If you've ever eaten a Chicago Town pizza and noticed that the crust goes completely gummy and white bread-like in your mouth, that's the modified starch and heavy dough conditioners at work. You're paying premium brand prices for what is effectively a highly engineered matrix of vegetable fats and industrial binders. If you already feel like checking your own freezer right now, hit that subscribe button, because the sheer scale of this corporate food science gets significantly worse from here. Bridge into the top tier of deception, where we find legacy frozen meals like Findus and classic supermarket French bread pizzas taking the number 6 and 5 spots. These products operate on pure nostalgia, targeting people who want a quick, comforting microwave or oven fix. But the French bread and sub-style pizza bases are laden with glucose syrup and fully hydrogenated vegetable oils. These oils are modified to change their melting points, allowing the product to sit in a freezer for a year without separating. The meat toppings on these vintage-style pizzas are often a reconstructed paste of pork and beef fat, held together with sodium phosphates and synthetic binders. When independent laboratories analyzed the trans fat structures hidden in fully or partially hydrogenated fats, the results are clear. They spike bad cholesterol and damage heart health. yet through structural loopholes and blending techniques. These corporate giants keep using them because real butter or pure olive oil would destroy their profit margins. Taking the number 4 spot is a massive corporate powerhouse that dominates the frozen snaking aisle across the UK, Dr. Oetker's Standard Ristorante and Casa di Mama lines. They wrap themselves in a sophisticated, thin and crispy Italian aesthetic, complete with elegant packaging that screams authenticity. But guess what? Dr. Oetker owns Chicago Town. They are a massive German multinational food conglomerate, and the corporate strategy across their mainstream lines is highly standardized cost reduction. In their more complex, meat-heavy or barbecue sauce-laden variants, the cheese is routinely cut with milk proteins, cornstarch, and palm fat. Independent laboratory tests on ultra-processed foods have repeatedly shown that these synthetic additives alter how our bodies process nutrients, leading to rapid blood sugar spikes and poor satiety. Dr. Oetker trades beautifully on a premium continental image, but behind the elegant Italian font on the box lies the exact same industrial playbook: high salt, cheap fats, and chemical texturizers. Now we enter the true hall of shame, taking the top 3 spots as the worst frozen pizzas you can buy in the UK. At number 3, it's the major supermarket extra special or finest takeaway-style replica pizzas when stuffed with processed meats and artificial stuffed crusts. They look artisanal, packaged in sleek black cardboard, but the ingredient list is a mile long. They use chemical dough relaxants and yeast accelerators to pump out millions of units a week. At number 2, the industrial frozen pizza slabs sold in bulk at warehouse outlets and budget frozen food chains. They completely replace genuine mozzarella with analog cheese, a highly legal slurry of water, vegetable oil, casein, and emulsifiers that is dyed white to trick your eyes. And taking the absolute number 1 spot as the worst frozen pizza offense on British shelves, the ultra-processed, highly marketed, takeaway double decadence clones found in budget freezer centers. These pizzas combine every failure imaginable. The cheese is completely imitation, stabilized with carrageenan, a seaweed derivative heavily linked in gastroenterology research to gut inflammation and IBS flare-ups. The meat is a processed paste of scraps, loaded with BHT, and sodium nitrite. To make this oily gray chemical paste look like an authentic margarita, they historically relied on whitening compounds and heavy artificial colorings. You are paying hard-earned money for a chemistry experiment shaped like a pizza, engineered specifically to trigger your brain's fat and salt receptors while providing zero genuine nutritional value. It is a systematic corporate deception aimed straight at your wallet and your health. And now, this is what it was worth watching all the way through for. We've waded through the absolute dregs of corporate cost-cutting, chemical glues, and paint whitening agents masquerading as food. Now, let's talk about the absolute dynamic shift into real honest grub that you can buy right now on your weekly shop. The following options prove that you do not have to settle for toxic garbage just because you want the convenience of a quick oven bake. These brands operate with absolute transparency, meaning when you flip the box over, you recognize every single ingredient. It's actual food, made by companies that treat your body like an ally rather than an easy target for their spreadsheets. We kick off our recommended list at number 3 with a household favorite you can find on the chilled and frozen shelves of Tesco: Sainsbury's and Asda Pizza Express. Now, I know some purists might roll their eyes at a massive British high street chain, but when it comes to their retail cook-at-home range, their philosophy puts the budget chemical giants to absolute shame. The cheese on a standard Pizza Express margarita or American pizza is 100% genuine, creamy mozzarella, made from proper pasteurized milk, salt, starter cultures, and traditional microbial rennet. There is zero hidden palm oil, no modified potato starches to bulk out the weight, and absolutely no fake analog cheese blends. The crust is a straightforward, honest combination of wheat flour, water, yeast, and salt. When you take a bite, it behaves exactly the same way a proper restaurant pizza does. The cheese stretches naturally without leaving a plastic, chemical film on the roof of your mouth, and the tomato passata tastes like actual sun-ripened tomatoes rather than high-fructose corn syrup. Price-wise, it is an absolute win. While a standard Pizza Express pie sits at around £5.50 retail, they are almost permanently on a club card or nectar card promotion for about £2.75. That means you are getting an uncompromised, clean meal for effectively the same price as the synthetic industrial blocks we just blacklisted. The only slight downside is that they are relatively light on the toppings, so if you want a massive feast, you might find yourself slicing up a few extra bits from your own fridge. But as a baseline supermarket choice, It is a brilliant, highly accessible standard. Taking the number 2 spot is the absolute gold standard of supermarket premium pizza, available across Waitrose, M&S, Sainsbury's, and Ocado, Crosta, and Molica. This brand earned its place through the most rigorous evaluation possible: absolute ingredient integrity. If you want a pizza that delivers an actual sensory revelation from your home oven, this is where you look. Their dough is built on lievito madre, a traditional, slow-proved Italian mother yeast culture fed with fresh water from the Dolomites. They let that dough ferment slowly, hand-stretch it, and bake it on genuine Mount Etna lava stone over a beech and oak wood fire before it ever touches a freezing facility. The ingredient deck on their classic margarita is a masterclass in simplicity: wheat flour, mozzarella cheese, water, chopped tomatoes, tomato puree, sunflower oil, genuine Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, salt, olive oil, and oregano. That is it. No methyl cellulose, no chemical stabilizers, and absolutely no synthetic preservatives. The pepperoni and salami they use are traditionally cured meats with zero mechanically separated poultry paste. When you bake a Crosta and Molica pizza, the crust puffs up into a beautiful, charred, leopard-spotted rim that is light and digestible, completely avoiding that heavy, gummy, white bread texture that coats your throat after eating budget brands. It costs around £6.25, which is admittedly at the higher end of the supermarket freezer aisle. Cracked down per serving, it's about £3 an adult. When you consider that you are getting a B Corp certified product made in Italy with genuine artisan ingredients, that extra £2 isn't a premium marketing tax. It is the actual cost of real, unadulterated food versus a highly toxic chemistry experiment. And taking the undisputed top spot as the cleanest, most uncompromised restaurant-grade pizza available for your home oven, the Franco Manca cook-at-home range. Found directly in the chilled aisles of supermarkets like Ocado, Morrison's, and select premium retailers. Franco Manca revolutionized the British high street with Neapolitan sourdough pizza, and they have successfully translated that exact restaurant methodology into their retail boxes. The crust is made from finest grade 00 Italian flour, naturally proofed for 24 hours, hand-stretched, and stone-baked. The topping philosophy is fiercely authentic. Take their quattro formaggi or their salami and spicy induja options. They use silky Italian mascarpone, creamy real mozzarella, and sharp pecorino cheese. The meats are meticulously sourced pork and beef with zero chemical fillers, preserved using simple, traditional ascorbic acid and minimal nitrites rather than synthetic carcinogenicity risks like BHA or BHT. Nutrition specialists and consumer reviews consistently praise this range because it completely bypasses the industrial food matrix. It delivers a rich, complex, tangy sourdough base and intense, clean flavors that leave you feeling genuinely energized, rather than sluggish, bloated, and gagging for a glass of water due to a massive sodium overload. It is a premium product, sitting around £5.75, but it represents absolute victory over corporate marketing. It proves definitively that commercial food can be shipped nationwide without a single industrial shortcut. Every single option on this good list proves that when corporations tell you chemical additives are necessary for frozen food to work, they are lying. They aren't necessary. They are just cheaper. Choose real food. Armed with the truth, you are no longer a defenseless consumer at the mercy of corporate food laboratories. To make sure you never get conned into buying a box of chemical sludge again, here are 6 concrete, unshakable rules you need to follow every single time you find yourself standing in the freezer aisle of Tesco, Sainsbury's, or Asda. First rule, and this is your ultimate line of defense: flip the box and look at the ingredient list for the word mozzarella or cheese. If the label reads pizza topping, analog cheese, imitation cheese, or mentions milk protein isolates mixed with palm oil and potato starch, you drop it back into the freezer immediately because that is a synthetic, fat and starch slurry designed to fool your eyes. Second rule, look closely at the meat toppings for hidden red flags. Avoid any frozen pizza listing mechanically separated meat or heavily processed poultry pastes, and scan the tiny print at the very bottom for synthetic preservatives like BHA, BHT, or potassium sorbate, which corporations dump into the box to make cheap pork scraps survive a nuclear winter. Third rule, inspect the texture modifiers by checking for modified food starch, methyl cellulose, or carrageenan. These are industrial thickeners and wallpaper glues used to replicate the elasticity of real dough and real dairy, and they are notorious for triggering gut inflammation and leaving a greasy, synthetic film on the roof of your mouth. Fourth rule, apply the 4-ingredient dough test. Real, digestible pizza crust requires nothing more than wheat flour, water, yeast, and salt. If you see a laundry list of 20 different items, including dough conditioners, dextrose, and chemical accelerators like ammonium sulfate, you are looking at an industrial shortcut masquerading as a bakery product. Fifth rule: ignore the deceptive front-of-pack traffic light labeling and calculate the actual sodium impact based on what you are genuinely going to eat. Most brands like Chicago Town or Dr. Oetker split their nutritional data into unrealistic portions like 1/4 of a pizza, but if you know you're polishing off the whole thing or sharing it between just 2 people, multiply that salt number immediately so you aren't blindsided by a massive blood pressure spike. Sixth rule: watch out for the shrinkflation trap. If you notice your favorite supermarket house brand from Morrison's or Co-op has stayed the exact same price, but the actual weight on the back of the box has quietly dropped from 400 grams to 320 grams. They are charging you more money for less real food and filling the remaining space with air and packaging. When you take a step back and look at the British frozen food landscape as a whole, the entire system becomes incredibly transparent. The mega corporations that dominate our supermarket shelves haven't built their businesses on culinary excellence. They have built them on a brilliant, cold-blooded marketing illusion that manipulates your evolutionary craving for salt, fat, and convenience. They invest millions of pounds into glossy television adverts, bright packaging, and clever psychological phrasing like takeaway style or stone-baked luxury to distract you from the terrifying reality written in tiny print on the back of the box. But the minute you make that one vital shift in your consumer mindset, the minute you stop looking at the airbrushed photo on the front and start demanding absolute ingredient transparency on the back, you instantly strip away all of their corporate power. You transition from an easy target into a conscious shopper who refuses to let a multi-billion-pound board of directors compromise your family's health for the sake of an extra 3% profit margin. Thank you so much for sticking with me all the way through this investigation. If this breakdown has completely changed the way you look at a casual Friday night freezer dinner, please hit that like button right now and share this video with a mate, especially that one friend who practically lives off cheap frozen food boxes from Iceland and has no idea what they are actually putting into their body. I want to hear from you down in the comments, so drop a message below and tell me absolutely honestly, which of these brands is sitting in your kitchen freezer right now? And did any of these chemical ingredient lists catch you completely off guard? Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming exposés where we pull back the curtain on the corporate food industry. If you want to keep learning the dark truth behind what you eat, click on the video appearing on your screen right now where we break down the shocking reality of supermarket-ready meals. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after your health, and remember to always flip the box. Cheers.